Welcome to the Brooklyn Podcast, episode 6, with yours truly, Anthony Puccio, my partner, Colin Helwig. Colin, what's a good word over there?
What's up, bro? We're getting close. I think the next time we do this, we're gonna have we have gotten Nets basketball since the last time we talked. Granted, it was on we had to all watch on bootleg streams or whatever. It looked like that at least. We had some interesting audio. There was no commentators at all, but we got a preseason game. Next time we're gonna be chatting, we'll have a real game, so that's pretty cool. So I think it's like we're in the home stretch. It's Christmas Eve more or less. How you doing?
Doing good over here. I want to thank Lucas Kaplan for filling my spot in the last episode. You guys crushed it. Appreciate the Liberty talk, the Nets talk, everything that you guys did. But like you said, it's Christmas Eve in Brooklyn world, in the Nets world. Shout out to the Liberty in the finals. I don't
Mhm.
want to forget about that. We got a team at Barclays Center that's showing out, but right now we're here to talk Nets basketball. I don't have Fubo TV and I don't have League Pass, so I wasn't able to see the preseason game. Now I was able to obviously see some highlights. I see Cam Thomas
Mhm.
pulling up a lot, spot up shooting from three. Colin, if you caught anything, is there anything that you want to discuss about that preseason game that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've said this a lot. When it's preseason, it's hard to not make a mountain out of a molehill. It's the first time you're getting basketball for a while, so you can look at that and be like, "Oh, Cam Thomas has figured it out how to work within the offense, everything. He's going to be golden this year." It's you got to kind of bring it back in a little bit. I know we're all excited, but having said that, what I did see was Cam did a great job of playing within the offense. I guess I'll just get right into it. He's moving off ball. He was hitting the catch and shoot shots. He was moving with the ball. He really showed that it wasn't. I wrote this in my takeaways. It wasn't hero ball. It was just buckets. He struck the balance between. I remember Lucas actually talking about this when we were talking about Sabrina and the Liberty, striking the balance between when am I pulling up and when am I passing out of the when am I passing out of the drive, deciding between facilitator, shooter. And so he's doing that with the ball. He was moving well off ball. It was just good to see him out there. And Zaire Williams, I'd like to add, looked great on both sides of the ball. Obviously, still a very raw athletic prospect, but did a great job cutting in the basket. The feet were moving. He was great on defense. It was good to see those guys get out there and get some burn.
Yeah, I think particularly for a team like the Nets right now that are in a rebuild with a brand new head coach. Um, I felt this way in 2017. When you're trying to reestablish something, an identity, a style of play, just a cohesiveness. Obviously, preseason is crucial, right? It doesn't matter who's out there. I mean, don't get me wrong. A lot of
Mhm.
the guys that are going to be playing were out. You had Claxton out. You had Watford out. You had Daron Sharp out. But just the idea that we're not going to be really seeing much of a different product on the floor than what we're already seeing in preseason. So
Yeah.
again, I don't know if you caught anything from the style of ball that Jordy Fernandez is instilling there. Um, and if you did, be my guest to hop in. But this is something that I want to look for because, like I said, we're not seeing much of a different product. A lot of these guys are playing for a role on this team and should be playing like it's their last game if they are
Mhm.
playing for such. So I'm curious to see how they look, what style of ball they play, and how that applies for the regular season, right? For other teams, it might
Yeah.
not be the case, but for the Nets, I think in this scenario, it's fair to say such.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think it might have been a little bit of a different game to look at it from Jordy's perspective, just because I think there's been, whether it's been from the fan base or stuff we've read about people writing about the team, is how obviously he comes from the Sacramento system. Claxton's a very versatile ball handler. You got Ben Simmons too. Claxton wasn't out there though. He's still recovering from the hamstring precautionary or whatever, but regardless, he wasn't playing. So I'm very excited to see how Claxton operates in the Fernandez system. So I don't think we got like a big piece of the pie. Maybe we will in later preseason games. We'll have to see when Clax comes back. But there was just a lot more like motion to the offense. There were a lot more off ball screens. It seemed like it was a lot more of it was more complicated, but it was still cohesive. You know what I mean? Again, I don't want to put too much stock into
Yeah.
one measly preseason game that was played in a G League arena, but it seemed, it felt a little bit closer to the Kenny A offenses, honestly. which makes sense given the personnel between how similar it is to this team, that team. Not par for par, but it's, there's Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving aren't there. So,
Yeah, yeah. I remember again, like you said, you don't want to take it too serious. But I remember I went on Sirius XM radio when Kenny Atkinson first took over, and Sam Mitchell was the
mhm,
host,
yeah.
and I was doing a preseason segment with him, and I was explaining how uh, important the preseason was for the Nets, and he absolutely shredded me apart. But to my point, it was like, no, like
What did he
these
shoot
guys.
you apart for?
I believe what he said was, "Young man, you got to understand something. I've been around the league forever. These guys do not care." And my point,
Mhm.
and because I was going back and I was saying, no, like in Brooklyn, they do care. Like this is
And
important to them.
let me say something real quick. Even if he's right, what fun is it to say, "Who cares? No one cares. It's preseason." What fun is that?
Right. What fun is that? And two, again, like
We all
Sam
know
Mitchell.
it's the preseason. Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right.
Sorry.
And no, you're absolutely justified. And the thing is, look, he's been around the game obviously on a professional level. He has more credibility than I do in this sense. But at the same time,
Mhm,
again, in this context, if you follow the Nets and you've followed since Sean Marks has gotten here, he it's not that he shows his cards, but he throws things out there because he wants to see who's going to fit come regular season time. Again, I don't want to put too much stock in the preseason, but it's important when
yeah.
you're trying to establish a culture and identity. This is a team that is experimenting, trial and error. They want to see what works and what doesn't. Not to mention, again, the context of the Sam Mitchell interview was Kenny Atkinson was a first time head coach at that time, and this is
Mhm,
the same situation with Jordy. I want to see
yeah.
how he is coaching in real game situations. We've seen him with Canada, but we haven't seen him with an NBA roster. So I'm very curious, and I would really like them to get off of Fubo TV so I could watch it.
I believe they will be back on Yes, is what I've heard for the rest of the preseason. So that's one
Colin,
piece to the puzzle.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Colin, but you wrote about this on netsdaily.com. Shout out. About we're getting a lot of hamstring injuries in
Mhm.
Brooklyn Nets training camp. Do you make anything of that?
This is a dangerous question. Um, I wanna say no, I guess. Like, it's 5 guys can, like, twist their ankle, and it's just, like, rotten luck, and that's all it is, but I also understand where, like, if something keeps happening and it's happening to multiple guys, then there's could be a common denominator. I don't know. It's a difficult question. I know I read the Brian Lewis story about how the Nets have been running hard in practice, but that story was also accompanied by endless quotes of the player saying, "Yeah, we're totally down for this." So I don't know if they would be echoing such positivity around it if they were like, "Oh, I'm getting worked like a dog." Like I hate. Like, I don't think anyone would say they hate it, but I think it wouldn't be come off as so positive. So I think we'll have our answer on opening night. If I think Nick Claxton is the best example. We already know that Dayron's gonna be out for a while. We know that
Yeah,
Trennan's gonna be out for a while. They've over and over said Claxton, it's just precautionary. But then if it's game one and Claxton's on a pitch count, or if he's not playing, then it's maybe you're not making something out of. There's a reason for the hamstrings, but it's a little bit more serious, I guess. I don't know. What do you think?
yeah. Well, I think, like you said, we don't want to cause a controversy out of nothing, but one, I think it could be an indictment on the players and what they're doing in the off season. Maybe they're simply just not ready for training camp come time.
Hmm.
New head coach comes in, he wants to establish conditioning, he wants to get these guys running because they're going to be playing a fast paced offense. Um,
Hmm.
maybe they simply weren't ready. Uh, for
Yeah.
somebody who has torn their hamstring several times, sometimes it's as simple as just not stretching before practice, like or
Yeah.
hydrating
Yeah.
enough. So sometimes this is just something that is a non-story. But as you mentioned, like the fact that this has happened to a couple of actually key players and they're out for a significant amount of time. I think Dayron is what, 6 weeks predicted.
Aaron 6 week. Trendon they said they'll provide an update in 2 weeks. So theoretically he could play in the opener, but I mean, I have my doubts. 2 days before, all they said they would update. I don't know. We'll see.
I think that again, I don't want to pull at straws, but I think that they're trying to reestablish this like again this fast paced style of ball, this
Mhm.
gritty, style that Atkinson had, and now they're hoping that Jordy can implement with a team like this to try and squeeze out a couple extra wins to kind of make this team fun and infectious going down the line. But I did want to get your
Yeah.
thoughts on that. I don't want to make nothing something out of nothing, but
Mhm.
it's certainly a storyline because for two key players, I think highly of Watford. I think highly of Dayron Sharp, especially on a team like this. They're going to have big roles. Uh, Claxton being precautionary, I completely believe the way that the Nets run things, but uh,
Mhm.
it's interesting, and I am not going to blame Jody Fernandez for being too tough on these guys, making millions
No,
of
no,
dollars
nor
to
am I.
play
I
the
want that
damn
to be
game.
clear, nor am I.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
At
no,
the
and
end of the day, it's like if you wanna build that culture, then it's like survival of the fittest, you know what I mean? Like, if you weren't ready for camp, then it's gonna show, and then you're not gonna be able to play, the first month, and that's the way it goes, and,
right.
you either get conditioned, like, conditioning is something you build over time, so, alright, then you heal up and you get conditioned, and then you're back in the race, you know what I mean?
Well,
So,
on the bright side, and we could close it out at this. At least Ben Simmons didn't get hurt, and
yes, sir.
there's no outroar. So,
Correct, correct. We do have that.
mo- moving forward, let's have a little bit of fun with this. I know we only have two people in here right now, but if they want to comment after, if maybe we could throw this on Twitter or whatever it might be. We have a little rapid fire that we're going to do. Colin, I'm going to hit you first, and you're going to hit me. Um, we're going to one by one. We're going to do season prediction segment. Um, this is going to be strictly in the context of the Nets. So,
Mhm.
give me your MVP of the Brooklyn Nets this season.
For me, MVP of the Nest this year, scalding hot take, Cameron Thomas. What about you?
Golden hot take. I'm going Cam Thomas too. Uh, although I'm gonna put Nick Claxton right up there with him. 1A, 1B. I think Claxton's gonna have a great
I would
year.
say let's move on to the next award, and I would guess who
Yeah,
I'm gonna pick.
defensive player of the year.
Nick Claxton, who should have won it in my opinion 2 years ago, at the very least, should have been named all defensive team. In my opinion, the most disrespected defensive player in the NBA. I'll say that and I'll stand 10 on that. It was absurd how he just fell out of the conversation and the voting after the big network stopped covering the Nets when Katie and Kyrie left. I think it's being a stretch big, I think is one of the most impressive things you can do in basketball. Us Nets fans know how good of a defender he is. I hope the rest of the league realizes it, that pays attention to it this year. He's my defensive player of the year, Nick Claxton. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I also I can't believe him. I cannot. I feel like Stephen A. Right. Shannon. I cannot believe that I am feeling this way. But if Ben Simmons is right,
I knew those three words were gonna come into your mouth.
I,
Go
I,
ahead.
I feel so dirty saying this, But if he's right, if he is healthy and he is back covering guards again, he's got to be the old Ben Simmons for this to be the case. But like you have
Yeah.
this monster that used to be able to and was in the defensive player of the year conversation for several years. I believe there
hmm
was one year, maybe
He was
2020,
runner up in 2021. He was runner
2021,
up.
right?
Yep.
And that was when Gobert won,
The year the Nets lost to the Bucks in 7 in the second round was the year, and the Sixers were the 1 seed. He was the runner up.
and he was pissed that he didn't win. He said it.
Yeah.
He did an
I think that
interview.
was one of the Rudy years, but I'm not entirely sure.
No, I think it was a Rudy year, and he was
Mhm.
pissed off, and he said, I should have won." He did an interview with GQ magazine. I remember covering this at the time because he said he said something along the lines of he's like, "Look, I'm covering some of the best point guards in the game, some of the quickest guards in the game. I'm covering big men.
Yeah.
I'm covering everybody." And he's like, "And they ain't doing shit on me." Like he's like, "What
Yeah.
more do I have
Well,
to?"
that's my argument for Claxton, is that he
Yeah,
switches 1 through like, he is so
yeah.
fucking fast and tall and wingspan. Whew, sorry. I'm
my
a basketball modernist at heart. I love that shit.
no, no, please be my guest. I mean, I'm worried about Claxton being exposed this season just because of the supporting cast. Um,
Hmm.
Mind you, he was able to do it with guys that simply didn't even play defense 2 years ago. But pick and choose your poison. I don't know if the guys around him are gonna help or hurt his case more than not. I don't know if he's gonna be more isolated on an island or if Jordy's gonna play big and kinda have that paint stacked up a little bit. It sounds like he kinda might go with a
Hmm.
style like that. So, uh, I
Yeah.
think the easy answer is Nick Claxton, but Ben Simmons is like a weird again, if he's right that we've been playing for years and years and years. So,
Mhm. Yeah. No, I
just
hear you.
just to change things up on you, Colin.
Sure. Sprinkle it in. No, you're good. We need a little
Who's your
change.
who's running through the six this year? Who's the sixth man of the year for the Brooklyn Nets?
I'm gonna go with Shake Milton, who I've been a fan of since his days in Philadelphia. I think he did not really fit in Minnesota's system. He didn't play there that much, but he's a great pick and roll guy. He can play within an offense. He can catch and shoot. I think that Shake has been one of those guys where he was on the Sixers, he was on the Timberwolves. He played like 5 games on the Pistons, and they bought him out. Then he was on the Knicks. He's been on all these contending teams. He's yet to be on a team that is not going for it and can nurture a young guy. And I look at the guard rotation and Cam Thomas, Ben Simmons. I think Dennis Schroeder is going to, one way or another, find himself in the starting lineup a certain amount of times where we're not going to see him as a 6 man. He might start that way on opening night, but I just feel like whether it's Ben Simmons getting hurt or all the lineup fluidity that Jordy's going to mix in there because it's such like it's a totally open roster. He said that totally open rotation. I don't see Dennis as being a 6 man. I see him being a starter one way or another more often than not. But I see Shake as that guy coming off the bench, running the offense. I think he's definitely a underrated guy on this roster. What do you think?
You stole my answer. Um,
Oh no.
I really I couldn't agree with you any more than everything you said. I think Shake Milton is in a great situation in Brooklyn for his career. Um, this question in particular is very, very hard to answer, like with the Nets, especially because we don't know who's starting. Um, any of these guys outside of maybe Cam Thomas and Nick Claxton could be considered bench players on other
Yeah.
teams. Like I don't know, this is like one of those that are very, very difficult to answer. I think that if Zaire Williams could actually carve out a legitimate role, that then he can be that guy that maybe they turn to. But I agree with you. I'm not going to make anything more or less than this. Than Shake Milton is the pick for me. So
Love it. Love it.
most improved.
I'm gonna let you go first because I feel like I'm taking them all from you. Who do you got for most improved?
I want to see Trenton Watford this year. I want to see
Mhm.
the steps and leaps that he's able to take. I know that he's going to probably miss the first week of the season or whatever it might be, maybe first couple of games. But I think that Watford has an opportunity as a wing on this team to assert himself and find himself a serious role, especially if Cameron Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith are going to be on their way out at some point. This is somebody that's going to slide right into that slot. Um,
Mhm.
we saw him take strides last year. We saw a lot of, in my opinion, growth. Somebody that could put the ball on deck and get to the hole. Play
Yeah.
defense, a little bit versatile. Uh,
Mhm.
Unfortunately, this injury sets him back a little bit, but I think that he's going to have a bigger role on this team than maybe people anticipate. I can be completely wrong, but that's my take. What about you?
Yeah, no, I'll say this about Trent first. He was a big part of obviously watching the Nets at the end of last year when they had been eliminated. Probably was the most entertaining opportunity for Nets fans, but the games that were entertaining a lot of times, Trent and Watford was the reason for that. He's so good at. I have I like players who are good at the things that are difficult to teach. Like you can teach yourself how to like shoot the ball eventually. You get in the gym, you work on that. You can, become a better rebounder, get better at boxing out, stuff like that. Trendon Watford's court vision for a guy of that size is tremendous. You know, like maybe he wasn't sprinting down like Ben Simmons, fast break behind the back, but in the half court, the way he was able to navigate around that offense, especially with the limited spacing that the Nets had last year, was tremendous. So absolutely hats off to him. He already, if you were to start it from April and go on from there into this season, he'd be ahead in terms of improving yourself. But I picked Noah Clowney. I think the organization is very much behind him. He seems like a confident guy, and I think that's going to lead to a lot of minutes this year. And a lot of times when it's most improved, a lot of it is just getting that opportunity. So I think Clowney he has the platform to do that. And I think that him and Claxton together really have a chance to be something special at the defensive end. There's not going to be a lot of things that are going to be too special, at least we expect about the Nets this year. I think with their size, his ability to stretch the floor, he's kind of knocked out some of those rookie cobwebs with playing last year towards the end of the year. So I'm all in on Noah Clowney.
I like the choice. I was thinking Clowney. I'm so curious about Watford. I am also I want to touch on a point that you made. It doesn't need to be too long, but I feel like Sean Marks has gotten ripped apart for the Nets being small a lot of these years, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is justified. You know, they've played undersized. They played a lot of small ball.
2022. The reason we lost to the Celtics was because Kyrie Irving and Patty Mills were guarding Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown on the perimeter. That ain't gonna cut.
And Seth Curry
So
out there. Yeah, and Seth Curry was basically your small forward. Yeah, you're
Go on,
absolutely
though.
correct.
Yeah.
No, you're right. And look, I think it's justified. Sean Marks has believed in small ball, but I almost feel like this team has the makeup of a pretty like big wing and like wing and front court team. Like they didn't really address the guard situation as we've mentioned. You know, Schroeder, Cam Thomas, Ben Simmons, they're all there. Ben Simmons being 6'10" already fits into
Yeah.
both categories. But this is a pretty lanky team, no?
Very lanky team. Yeah, I think it's something that's gotten lost in like the year we got Royce O'Neal and TJ Warren and KD tweeted it's a wings league and the Nets proceeded to bring in a bunch of wings. It was because it was after that year we had the short team. It was seen as like, okay, they fixed this a little bit. They've got longer. They've only now no one's really talked about it because the stars are gone and people don't talk about the Nets as much, but they've only gotten longer since then. You know, you dealt away KD. Who do you get? You got Dorian Finney-Smith. You got Cam Johnson. Mikal Bridges came in. These are all lengthy wings. You send out those guys. Maybe the talent of the team has gone down, but the length has just gone up and up and up. And I think that's one thing the front office has definitely. I don't know if they didn't know it before, so I'm hesitant to use the word learned, but it's something that they have absolutely steered aggressively into the direction to. So I'm totally in agreement with you on that.
Well, I think a point that's worth making about the bigs and kind of to your point, how they've maybe learned or caught on is the structure of contracts for big men. You're right, like for Jared Allen when he was on the Nets, for example, he was great when he was on a low end salary, but when it was time to pay him, do you want to give Jared Allen $100 million? Sure, if you're a contending team. In the Nets scenario, maybe not, right? Claxton leading up to his extension, there was a lot of debate about this, and I understood both sides. Like paying a big man that's really giving you 10 and 10, that isn't a focal point of the offense, right?
The center is kind of the running back of basketball,
right?
Where it's not as big of a position. It used to be the most important position before Michael Jordan. People thought that was the only way you could win was with a big guy. Right. Now a lot has happened since then, but you're right in terms of the money as well.
I think that the Nets are trying to finagle this, and Sean Marks has been very good at drafting bigs, and I think that he's using the rookie scale to his advantage and trying to find those diamonds in the rough. Obviously, they didn't draft anybody this year, but having these young guys on low end salaries, again, seeing who can kind of emerge outside of the Claxtons of the world, whether they be trade pieces, whether they be pieces for the future, whatever it might be. when you're not Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid, it's very hard to justify paying these guys $150 million a year. So if you can
Yeah.
find somebody that could do, something that these guys are doing, maybe not Embiid and Jokic, but the Goberts of the world, the lobs and blocks types of players. Uh, I definitely think it's worth pointing out, like that it's an interesting time that they went big because this is the rebuild time. This is the time to evaluate and see what you got, especially as they're trying to shed salary and not spend too much on this. So, again, I don't want to make something out of nothing, but I do think it's worth pointing out. Like, it's an interesting time for them to kind of experiment with this when Sean Mark's track record really, really does not speak for itself when it comes to allocating the right guys in the front court.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail right on the head.
So, all right, we're moving right on with our Nets 2024-2025 preview. Appreciate whoever's rocking with us right now, and if you're listening to the replay, thank you for sticking with us. Colin, what are you most excited for this season?
How many games we're gonna win? I mean, it's championship or bust year, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm excited to, and this is what comes with being a team that's not expected to be good. How many different guys we're going to see and so many different opportunities. Jordy Fernandez is going to be able to have these free, fluid lineups where you could start Cam Thomas, Dennis Schroeder, Jalen Wilson, Day'Ron Sharp one day. I don't know if that's 4 or 5 guys. I'm not the best at counting. And then the next day, it'll be Noah Clowney, Nick Claxton, Zaire Williams, and like Shake Milton, and that'll be like maybe not start, but like in and out. There's so many guys where this team is going to be looking to figure out its identity and trying to figure out who do we want to keep here when hopefully we turn this the rebuild starts into it is a build and we have something that we want to move forward with. It's going to be a year of tryouts almost to see who's going to be on the team 3-4 years from now when it's hopefully good. So I'm just excited to see all these guys get an opportunity, all these guys that have either been in tough situations and it just hasn't panned out, or these guys like Cam Thomas where it's like, hey, can you be a superstar? Things like that. So we're gonna get a different team, maybe not in the beginning, but most nights we're gonna get a different team. And that's not something that a lot of teams can say. I'm sure a lot of teams would prefer to win 60 games a year, but that's probably not going to happen. So looking at the silver lining, I guess that's what I'm excited for, seeing all the different opportunities guys are going to get. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking what I'm not looking forward to is it being like mid-February and they have 50 losses, but at the same time, to be on the more optimistic side, I'm excited to see along the lines of what you're saying. Just what can Jordy Fernandez do? I really I could say Cam Thomas, I could say Nick Claxton, I could say these guys, but I'm looking at it from a Nets perspective and how they're building it, and I'm really, really, really putting Jordy under a microscope. The same way that we did with Kenny Atkinson, the same way that we do with a lot of these first-time coaches, uh, particularly in this example with the Nets, reestablishing a culture, getting these guys to play hard. Can they squeeze out these magical wins that they were able to do, during that 17-18 season, 18-19 season, right? Like, are they able to just like a lot of players around the league when they were rebuilding back in those days, 5, 6, 7 years ago, around the league were saying like we don't like playing the Nets. Like they're not a good team, but we don't like playing them because they just play so hard and we know they're going to give
Yeah.
us a run for their money, right? I'm looking forward to seeing that. And if I don't hear that and I don't see that, then something's not going right with this rebuild, right? Jordy's in a position where I don't feel like he could fail. And I've told you this before, Colin, right? Like they win, he's a hero. They lose, it's fine. They get a good draft.
Yeah.
But the one thing in that middle way is I want to see, and I'm excited to see how he's able to, communicate with his players, get close, build a culture, build an identity, but really make the Brooklyn Nets like respectable again. Just like not even good, just fun and respectable. That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I think the years when the Nets were going for it, I remember thinking there were certain teams. I'm struggling to come up with any. I think like that Spurs team with like DeJounte Murray, like they weren't the best team. I think they Actually, you know what? They snuck into the play-in that year, so kudos to them. But they were a team that was not expected to compete, but it was like you hated playing against them and there are these teams that play like they have nothing to lose. That's why it's tough for the bigger seeds in March Madness when you're playing some team from Timbuktu and it's Duke and it's like, all right, like these guys are going full throttle. They're thinking about they can just beat us and that's gonna be like huge for them. Where it's like you're not gonna admit it, but you're thinking about this game and the next game, and you're thinking about the standings if you're like a Duke like team. So yeah, and the respect thing, everyone wants to be respected. I think the Nets have had their name dragged through the mud quite a bit in
Yeah,
the past couple of years. So if they can get back to that, I think everyone will be happy.
yeah, yeah, and just the importance of word of mouth, as we know. But
Hmm.
I'm gonna move on now to asking you what do you think that Cam Thomas's stat line is going to look like come game 82, and what do you think Ben Simmons' stat line is going to look like come game 82?
For Cam, so I wrote down, I think he's going to do average 26, 6, and 4 assists before rebounds. Ben is yeah, I'm with it. I mean, he averaged 22 last year with Mikal Bridges being the focal point of the offense for 65% of the season. I think he's going to get there. So I'll admit that's definitely the over, but I'm willing to buy the
I
over.
like
For
it.
Ben Simmons is the harder one because it feels like his floor and his ceiling are so far away from each other. I wrote down 8, 9, and 10.
Yep.
It looks funky, but it feels right, and it's just like the median that I wanted to put 10, 10, and 10 because he's Ben 10. And it's like ha 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 Ben 10, whatever. Like maybe it's some kind of like omen thing, but no, I mean 8, 9, and 10. In that preseason game, he still didn't look too interested in driving to the basket, which I think is where his offense needs to start above all else. So that's why I have the points still down, but still a good rebounder. He's got that, like I talked about earlier, court vision is something you can't really teach. It's something that you have, just doesn't go away. So got great court vision. 8 assists is pretty damn good. So I'll give
Yeah.
him 8, 9, and 10. What are you thinking?
I should have asked how many games you think Ben Simmons is going to play, but
That's a harder question than anything we'll talk about today.
yeah, I agree. But Cam Thomas, I say a hair under 25 points per game. Um,
Hmm.
I think he's going to average 5 assists, 2 rebounds, shoot 48% from the field. Come back to this. Ben Simmons, I'm somewhere along the same lines. I'm going to say he's going to average about, I don't know, 6 points a game, around 10 assists a game, 9 rebounds. 6, 10, 9. And
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
say that he's going to play 50 games. I think I'm
50. I'll go with 60. I'm feeling optimistic today. I'll be the good guy.
Who's going to get traded by
Yeah.
the deadline?
I mean, it's a race between Bogdanovich and Dorian Finney-Smith. They're the veterans. They're the ones with contracts expiring. Finney-Smith has a player option, but I don't expect him to pick that up. I'm going to go with Dorian Finney-Smith because his salary is $14 million a year and Bogdanovich is 19, so he's easier to trade. But it's really just like a two-horse race. I think the more interesting question, and feel free to give your answer on who's going to get traded first and then get to this, is who's more likely to stay, Cam Johnson or Dennis Schroeder? I don't think Dennis has. I'm not familiar with his contract situation. I think if he was on an expiring, I would know about it. So he may have 1 or 2 years left, but that's a more interesting hypothetical. But who do you think gets traded first on your end?
Finney Smith. I think Finney Smith is kind of inevitable at this point, given what you said
Yeah.
about the contract situation, what he wants to be part of a contender. He could really be serviceable somewhere else. I don't think they're going to be in a rush to trade Cam Johnson. They just gave him that big contract. He's still young. Uh, he's somebody that you don't need to rush out of the door. And we've touched on this. If Sean Marks was getting what he wanted for Cam Johnson at this point, he would have traded him.
Yeah.
So I think come deadline, we could be talking about some other headlines and other storylines about this, but I think DFS is the easy answer. And Ben Simmons also, again, another hypothetical, an expiring contract. If he's playing good basketball or even close to good basketball, somebody's going to take on that expiring contract. Maybe, 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 maybe. But
They're gonna need to have a fat trade exception to take 40 mil.
yeah,
Or it's just like the Pistons, but I'm not totally familiar with their billing situation.
no,
But
it's crazy. Like everything that we have to say around Ben Simmons is if. It's all so
yeah,
hypothetical on things that are we crazy for even entertaining the idea, or are we merely
I mean,
just
we're constantly told that he's fine, and then it doesn't happen. Like, I don't think anyone can blame us for not knowing what the fuck to think, for lack of better words. Excuse my profanity. Like, go to the mental asylum. Like, just be like, if you're absolutely right. That is the word. And I don't think he likes it that way either. It's like literally no one's happy about this.
no,
So let's
no.
hope he's out there a lot this year.
I got two more for you, and this is a little bit vague, but if you have a hot take or something that you feel is unexpected, um, that other people on Twitter, on Nets Daily comment section, or whatever it might be at Barclays Center might not agree with you about.
I mean, Shake Milton's rise was my hot take to start with. I guess it's not that hot because you're behind it too. I think that we're gonna see here's one. I don't know how behind it I am. I think Ben Simmons and Nick Claxton will shoot threes. We'll each take like a three. We'll be taking a three a game by like December. I think that Jordy means it when he's just going to tell these guys, let it fly. It's the first time they've been on a team where the team is not contending. So it's more about, hey, let's see how good you can be instead of every possession counts because we're in a playoff race. And they're both these guys who can prolong their careers. And not that, I mean, Claxton, none of these guys are old, but Claxton's obviously at the beginning of his career. But we saw what happened with Brooke Lopez. Brooke Lopez was a back to the basket guy. He was getting older. The Nets worked with him for a summer. Now he's one of the best. I mean, he's in Milwaukee, but it was in Brooklyn where he learned how to shoot the ball. I could see the Nets have these bigs and in that same situation. So yeah, that's my hot take. I think these guys are going to let it fly, and the people may not disagree with them. They might not all go in, but I think they're going to let it fly. What about you?
I don't know if I have a hot take. I don't know.
I'm used to my last show, which was just all hot takes. That's all they ever want to talk
Yeah.
about. So
Saying
I
this
will
off
say
the
this
wall
though. I
shit.
said that I predicted that the Spurs would be like the Kings the year they did light the beam and were on this run, and they were absolutely that. So I did have
Alright.
some bangers back in the day. But yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to be so pessimistic, but we got to be a little bit like real here. Somebody
Yeah.
that watched the Nets since I was, since 2000, uh, like religiously, having been
Hmm.
through 12 and 70, I don't think that the Nets are going to win more than 15 games this year. I think Cam Thomas alone will win them some games. I think playing hard might win them some games. I think they are going to be so bad this year that it's going to be hard to watch. And as a result of that, I think that people are going to question the Jordy hire, and it's going to be premature. It's going to be premature. It's not.
They do have a tough schedule. They have a tough schedule to start, even
Yeah,
by their standards.
yeah, and I guess where my hot take is that I don't think people are going to be satisfied with the Jordy hire the first year that he's here. I think that maybe year 2, year 3, it'll
Hmm.
start to come along, but I do think that right now, I think that this team and the roster is actually, like, so bad that, like, if they're getting blown out and Barclays Center is just emptying out by the 3rd quarter, like, it's going to be so miserable to watch, and I like I said, I hate look, like, I hate to be that guy, like, but and it's not that I'm not excited for the season, but yo, like what they got right now is like teams have gotten a lot better. You mentioned the schedule is really, really tough. I
Mhm,
can't see these guys winning more than 16 games. You know, that 12 and 70 team, I believe the starting lineup was Devin Harris, um, Courtney Lee, Chris Douglas Roberts. I can't remember who the power forward was, and then Brooke Lopez. Like they weren't like that. They weren't like that
he
bad. They
wasn't
weren't.
still there, was he?
What'd you say?
Was Yi still there, or was he gone by that point?
I think Yi was sold
He was
off
a
at that
center, though.
point.
He wouldn't have started over Brooke
Yeah,
if Brooke was there.
I
Doesn't
think it
matter,
was
but
Dante Graham or something like I forget his name. Not here nor there. I almost felt like that team had more talent. We weren't expecting a 12-win season. I think Cam can kind of will them to some games, but yo, like again, maybe I'm just being pessimistic. But the point that I'm trying to make is that I think that right now, like we're so excited about the fact that they have a direction and like they have a new coach and it's a fresh start and this, that, and the other thing. But like I think we're heavily underestimating how difficult a rebuild really truly is when you are this bad. And if you are going to be this bad, like it's easy to say it before the season and it's easy to say it at draft day after. But when you're actually living through it and you know, you start to like nitpick at every single thing that the coach does. And I'm not
yeah.
saying that Jordy's going to be a bad coach. I'm saying that I think that Nets fans are going to get frustrated because they're going to want this guy to play. They're going to want this guy to play. They're going to want them to play this style of offense. They're going to question why Nick Claxton is taking 3-pointers. They're going to question why Ben Simmons is taking 3-pointers, right? I
Mhm.
I feel like it's just going to culminate into something that it's easy to say right now, like, yeah, I'm glad they picked the rebuilding direction, but when it's actually happening and they're 4-30, it's going to be really difficult to look at the head coach and the general manager and be like, "Great job, guys."
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with what you're saying. I think that yeah, it's so easy to because I think we can all acknowledge that the rebuild was the right decision, but it's not going to be an easy decision. Like it's going to suck. Like you're going to stink this year. But that's what rebuilding is. You know what I mean? I agree with the Jordy point too. Like I don't recall. No one was throwing flowers for Kenny Atkinson the beginning of his tenure, but I think
Yeah,
given what he did with the roster 2-3 years later, he was seen as a good coach. We don't know if it'll be that quick for the Nets, but I don't think yeah, it will be very hard for him because at the end of the day, even if people understand it's a rebuilding team, they're going to need to see something to make them think that it was a good hire. So I agree with you that I don't think people are going to be sold on him yet. There's one team that I do think I'm willing to say I feel very strongly that the Nets will be better than, have a better record than, and that is the Portland Trailblazers. Strictly on the account that we're in the East, they're in the West. I think people still underrate how good the West is. I think there's like 7 teams in the West that the Celtics are the best team in the league, but after that, there's like 7 teams in the West that I think could beat every everyone else in the East in a 7-game series. I don't know that I'm picking them to, but I think that they could, and I just think the Blazers are going to get beat down. I think Jeremy Grant a couple more year, or at least he's one more year into that contract. He's more tradable now than he was before. My guy Jeremy Grant, Syracuse legend, but I think there's a chance that they deal him. I'm not necessarily sold on Chauncey as a coach. I think that the
no.
Nets will be better than the Portland Trail Blazers. That may be it, but I just if I'm looking at it again, it's mainly that East West thing. Like we're going to be able to play the Hornets and the Wizards, like a handful of times. Who are they going to be able to play?
Right.
That I can't think. There's not a lot
No.
of true basement toes. Like the Jazz, you got the Jazz, but the Jazz came and like have they won a ton of games. Not Jesus. What am I saying? Not a ton of games. They won more than everyone thought they would the last 2 years.
Yeah.
The first year of that rebuild, they were like top 5 in the West through like
Yes.
December. You know what I mean? Like I think the Jazz are a team that they got Laurie Markkinen, Colin Sexton. I think is a very underrated basketball player. Um, I think the Nets will have more paths to wins than the Portland Trailblazers. So they will not be the worst team in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think that with these like horrible teams on paper that you know, in this day and age of the NBA, that you know you're going to squeak out victories just simply off of other teams sitting players and resting them or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
There's always going to be that like something, you know, that gives you a little bit of hope, but I can't really see the Trailblazers is a great example, by the way, Colin. I agree with everything you're saying, and I am
Thank you.
certainly not sold on Chauncey.
Sorry, Trailblazer fans.
Yeah, sorry out there in Portland. We feel your pain, but you know, and I'll say the same thing with the Nets. I think that you know they'll squeeze some out just from Cam Thomas going off and dropping 45 one game, right? Like they'll win a
Mhm.
couple of games because you know the Bucks decided to sit their whole starting lineup or something like that. But I'm gonna segue into this next and final question that I have on our rapid
Yeah.
fire, which is predicting the Brooklyn, not podcast, the Brooklyn Nets final record. And if you want to throw a seed in there, you can be my guest.
I actually counted. I went through the schedule before we did this, and I was like, to see which games I thought would be wins. And the number I got on was 23, which equates to 23 and 69. Or no, 23 and 59. Sorry. Not a math guy.
Shade under
The
six.
only one that really like guaranteed to me, you talked about like getting wins at the end. The Nets play the Knicks the last game of the season. The Knicks will likely have their playoff position totally wrapped up by then. It has all the makings of they're like going to the playoffs. They got their guys resting. The Nets are going to go out there and play hard. And as much as this sucks, is they're going to have that be like their little Super Bowl at the end of the year. They're going to beat the Knicks the last game of the season, and it'll be their 23rd win. So it really doesn't mean anything. But to them, it'll be a little like, yeah, you know what I mean? The Knicks
Yeah,
won't give a shit because they'll have playoffs wrapped up. But that was one where I was like, you look at these games, you look at the back to backs, you kind of like see the narrative. I think I gave us like a win against one. I love the Grizzlies, but one against the Grizzlies early. Like I still don't know the makeup of that team with all the shifting they've done. Like who knows if Jaw's going to be healthy? I saw he twisted his ankle. Uh, Pick out one or two like Wizards games, like
yeah,
Charlotte games. I actually think Charlotte has a chance to be low key good this year. Maybe not
agreed.
good, but
Yeah.
solid. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I landed on. What do you got? 15 and how many losses is that?
I'm saying 16 and 66. I
16 and 16. Okay.
yeah, I just I don't know like how I can confidently look at any game and say, you know what, they're better than these guys. Like I said, Cam Thomas could go and drop 40, 50 points, but
Hmm.
is Jordy going to even let him do that? Right? They're going to try and implement a team oriented style of ball, and there's going to be games where I feel that he takes over. But I just I can't see this panning out to be like 23 is like
Yeah.
my ceiling. That is my absolute freaking ceiling.
Hmm.
And look, this is no disrespect. I watched the episode last time, and we were talking about the fellas here. The Nets Daily fellas are saying that the Nets aren't egregiously tanking, and I don't think that they're egregiously tanking in the sense that they're going to go out there and just lose games on purpose. But this is a bad basketball team on paper. I hope
Hmm.
I'm wrong. Here's the thing. Like people are gonna like
Yeah,
become like,
I don't like I don't want to be mediocre either. You know what I mean? Like
right.
it's gonna suck, but like at the end of every loss, like maybe I'm trying to be too positive here, but like think like this is the shit you got to go through, man. Like
You're absolutely right.
I maybe I'm one of these people right now we're talking about where it's like it's easy to say now like the season had started. Maybe you'll talk to me in February and I'll say, "What the hell? I hate this," but it's what you got to do. You got to dig your way through the fucking trench to get outside of Shawshank.
That's a hell of a line right there.
I knew I had to find my way to some sort of
Yeah,
metaphor at the end of that.
that was
But
solid. That was really really good. And you know what? Hope is a good thing. Perhaps the best of things, and hope good things
there you
never die
go.
out.
There you
So,
go.
uh, look, I hope I really hope I'm wrong. I don't want to sound so negative. It's just it's hard to actually feel like this team is a serious basketball team. But we understand where they are. We understand the phase that they're in. If they win 16 games, hell, that's probably one of the best case scenarios. Even though the draft odds don't really change much with the bottom four teams, but
Yeah.
having watched 12 and 70 and having just watched this team in general, like Yeah, on the flip side, I could also say, look, they had a very similar team last year under Jacques Vaughn, and they were 10-9, right? They
Mhm.
surprised people. They had Mikal Bridges there. That was one of the few differences, but they were 10-9 at one point last year, and I could be
I think
completely
they were
wrong.
more than I think they were like 13-9 actually.
There might have been that at one point
Yeah.
they were 3 or 4 games above 500, and then it all went
Yeah.
downhill from there. But Colin, I'm gonna wrap this up. If you got anything you want to wrap up with, please jump in right now. Um,
No, yeah. I'll just say everyone do your best before we start this year. Do your best to have fun with it. Learn to laugh at your team. It's something I think I've gotten better than. It's kind of something I was forced into as a New York sports fan growing up outside of Philly. So, try to have fun with it. And yeah, that's about it. I'll be at practice at the park on Sunday. So if anyone's around, come say what's up. Love to meet some of you guys. And yeah, that's it. I'll kick it over to you, Pooch.
Hit our boy up at Practice in the Park. Check out our work at netsdaily.com. Colin is constantly writing. I'm writing here and there. Um, I like the point that you made, Colin, about let's have some fun. Let's laugh. We got to understand something, Nets fans and everybody, just basketball fans in general. Like at the end of the day, we're all here for the same reason, and I always say that because we love hoops. We love watching these guys play. We love this game, whether playing it, whether watching it. Um, Nets fans in particular have been so divided over the last 5, 6 years, weirdly correlating with society. And it would be really, really nice to just, I'm not saying everybody has to agree on everything, but like, let's keep it a little classy. And that's what we do with the Brooklyn podcast. So let's have fun with the season. Let's be respectful if we disagree with people and, not everything has to be so serious. And I agree with you, Colin. Like we talked about Mikal Bridges versus Cam Thomas debate last year. Like these guys play on the same team. Like, what does it matter?
Mm,
We root for the same team. We root for the same players. It doesn't need to be this person versus this person. We're watching basketball. We're watching hoops because we love the game. We're here for the same reason. And I'll just leave it at that. So,
bingo. And go Liberty.
and go Liberty. Indeed. So if you want to catch us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, follow us at the Brooklyn Pod. If you want to drop a question for our next episode, we are the Brooklyn Pod at gmail.com. And you can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, the Brooklyn. If you want to be more specific, the Brooklyn Podcast with Pooch and Collin Helwig. So on that note, Colin, it's a pleasure as always. The next time that we do this, we're gonna have real hoops playing, and that's a beautiful, beautiful sign with the sports equinox
Yes,
going on.
sir.
So I am so excited to do that. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to do this with you. And to those who watch this, it's been real. It's been nice. In other words, it's been real nice. Until the regular season starts. Colin.
Peace, gang.